And that concludes approximately 1 minute of silence. That's what Judge Timothy Walmsley asked for in the courtroom before he sentenced the men who murdered Ahmaud Arbery. He did this to have them understand how long a minute was, then reminded them that was just 1/5 of the time that Ahmaud Arbery ran in terror as he was chased and hunted down by these men in pickup trucks with guns. What was that like for him? He asked. Then he pronounced the sentences. And I had the same feeling that I had when I heard the verdicts. At that time, I was sitting outside of the courthouse with some of the family members, and we began to hear about the convictions of all 3 men from folks who were watching on their telephones. The feeling I had was unusual. It really wasn't a joyful feeling. For one young man was dead, and the other 3 men would likely spend all or most of their lives in prison. It wasn't joyful. It was justful. Now, I know that's not a real word, but this isn't a game of Scrabble. Yes, we felt a little bit of justice come to Brunswick that day. Later, our Glenn Clergy Equity Group again accompanied and prayed with family members during the federal hate crimes trial. And again, there was justice. In a press release from the Justice Department on August 8, 2022, not that long ago, this thing stretched out a long time, y'all. Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark of the Department's Civil Rights Division said, "It was important that this murder was prosecuted for what it was, a brutal, abhorrent, racially motivated hate crime. Ahmaud Arbery should be alive today. The tragic murder of Mr. Arbery reminds us that hate-fueled violence targeting Black people remains a modern-day threat in our country, and we must use every tool available to hold perpetrators accountable. We hope that this sentencing ends one painful chapter," she said, "for the family of Ahmaud Arbery, the Brunswick community, and the nation as a whole." Justice. One of the values that our UU Second Article Study Commission is lifting up as a shared value for Unitarian Universalists. So if you were here last Sunday, you've already heard, as I said, a sermon on justice. It was excellent. He sent it to me by Clint Talls. And I do feel like it's a little bit of serendipity that we both chose this theme so close together, because it's probably good to get a double dose of justice. Facebook has a place on your profile where folks are asked to write a few words describing who they are. I use the same words that I have at the top of my blog where I post my sermons and other pieces. Those 2 words are Just Jane. And yes, it does have a double meaning. Although I've earned 6 degrees and jumped some hoops that have titles that go with them, when folks ask me what they should call me, I usually answer, Just Jane. Now, there are a few who are uncomfortable with that, and I happily answer to other monikers, but most of you call me Jane, unless you're formally introducing me at some function or something. The just in Just Jane is a synonym in this case for simply. But I like the fact that using that description encourages me also to a higher calling, to be just, to be fair, to do what is right, and to work for justice every day. One of my heroes is Jane Addams, a truly just Jane. We claim her as a Unitarian because she often attended the Unitarian Church in Chicago and regularly spoke about her settlement house known as Hull House, but she never signed the book. We still claim her though. Here's what she had to say about justice. She said, those who believe that justice is but a poetical longing within us, the enthusiast who thinks it will come in the form of a millennium, those who see it as established by the strong arm of a hero, are not those who have comprehended the vast truths of life. The actual justice must come by trained intelligence, by broadened sympathies toward the individual man or woman who crosses our path. One atom added to another is the only method by which to build up a conception lofty enough to be of use in this world. She also reminded us, the good we secure for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secured for all of us and incorporated into our common life. That's something to think about during this political season. The good we secure for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secured for all of us and incorporated into our common life. So as I asked the children, what is justice? Dictionary.com has 11 definitions, but I'll just share 4 with you. 1, the quality of being just, righteousness, equitableness, or moral rightness. 2, the moral principle determining just concept. 3, the conformity to this principle as manifested in conduct, just conduct, dealing, or treatment. And 4, just treatment of all members of society with regard to a specified public issue, including equitable distribution of resources and participation in decision-making, usually used in combination. One of these public issues that you may have heard a lot about this week, and that some of us heard last night a lot about at the NAACP gala, is environmental justice. Environmental justice. United Nations is having their climate change conference in Egypt from November 6th through 18th. And already one of the messages that is ringing out from the speakers is that the global north caused the crisis, but the global south has to endure more of the hardships. What is justice for the countries who've already had to endure more flooding, drought, unsustainable temperatures, and more? And shouldn't that help come from those who caused the problem? Wouldn't that be justice? What if the individuals in these places are not able to adapt fast enough to the changes? Will industrialized nations be willing to increase the numbers they will allow to immigrate? Of course, environmental justice isn't just a global concern. In our region, the rich can live in places that are not polluted, flooded, and more. Not so for the poor. Then we see more sickness in these neighborhoods. Where is the justice? Where is the justice? A lot of issues related to justice have been highlighted in this very difficult election season. It seems we've become so polarized that we can't accomplish what we need for a just world. America is broken. But we all voted, and we will continue to do so and continue to speak out. Sometimes, when I share with you about issues of justice, you may feel that I look a little angry. You may say, calm down, Jane. And I share with you that I love peace. I love peace. But I do agree with those who proclaim no justice, no peace. Now, that doesn't mean I endorse violence. I do not. But I do honor the truth that it's hard to have peace, the peace you need in your hearts with so much injustice around you. And anger can be a good thing if it's channeled in the right way. Marshall Rosenberg offers this metaphor. Anger can be valuable if we use it as an alarm clock to wake us up, to realize that we have a need that isn't being met and that we are thinking in a way that it makes it unlikely to be met. This is the kind of prophetic anger that stirs us to action, the kind that Clint was talking about with Amos, he had a prophetic voice trying to stir them up. In our earlier reading, Martin Luther King was talking about that kind of anger or maladjustment. There are certain practices or conditions, he said, to which we ought to be maladjusted that rightly stir us to anger. He names racial segregation, religious bigotry, economic conditions that take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few, the madness of militarism, and the self-defeating effects of violence. Today, we might add many others. In a sermon he shared as he ended his ministry in Asheville, my colleague, the late Reverend Mark Ward, asked, how shall we frame that anger in a way that doesn't do damage or distract us from our larger goals and deeper needs? How might anger be a blessing to the world? Kathleen Kavanagh of Harvard says in her book, Prophecy Without Contempt, that prophetic language can be a powerful tool to combat entrenched social evil, to shake persons out of their indifference. But that if aspiring prophets cannot connect their calls for reform to deep veins in the community's own values, they'll be perceived as cranks. So there is a balancing act in working for justice. Holly Near wrote the song we sang earlier, We Are a Gentle, Angry People, after the assassination of Harvey Milk. This song is a call to action. It demands that we make sure everyone knows who we are and how many we are, and that we will not be moved. We who are scared and angry and loving and resisting. It begins with the verse, we are a gentle, angry people, and ends with, we are a gentle, loving people. And we can lift our prophetic voices together. The prophetic voices in this community, though, need not come from just ministers. My colleague, the Reverend Meg Riley, argues that we Unitarian Universalists should explore the notion of what it might mean to create prophetic communities in our congregations, communities that see their work, as Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams described it, as a matter of making history rather than just being pushed around by it. Meg argues that there are three main qualities to such congregations. First, they are clear about the values they stand for. Second, they embrace an ethic of radical caring. And third, they focus on hope. One goal of our Article 2 Study Commission is that we be clear about the values we share. And that's why they have them here. This is a draft, we're working on them, but they say that we should be clear about the values we share. And that we follow up by doing something for each of these values. Each of the values, including justice, has a covenant statement. And the next time I speak to you, which will be after Thanksgiving on love, I'll share all of those because we do have them now, have a complete draft. But today, I'm going to just share the one on justice. And you can see some familiar language in here. It says, we value justice. We covenant to create environments where people thrive. We will work to dismantle systems of racism, oppression, and white supremacy culture in our congregations and in ourselves. In working to bring justice, we work to bring peace to ourselves, our community, and our world. So this is where they're bringing that 8th principle language in that they agreed to in 2021 to somehow include in the preface or somewhere in this second article. They're bringing it into this justice one. I invite you to read it with me. We value justice. We covenant to create environments where people thrive. We will work to dismantle systems of racism, oppression, and white supremacy culture in our congregations and in ourselves. In working to bring justice, We work to bring peace to ourselves, our community, and our world. That's a mighty high calling. Clint Talls told me that after his sermon Sunday, folks wondered, but what can we really do? And he wished he'd ended his sermon with some possibilities. I told him I was glad he left something for me. So here are a few other ways that folks I've been reading suggest things we can do. We can examine our own beliefs, biases, and habits. We can educate ourselves and not depend on those who suffer from various oppressions to do the work for us. In addition to our congregational efforts, we can volunteer with organizations that work for justice. We can find ways to speak out through social media, letters to the editor, at protests, or just with our friends and neighbors. We can donate money to organizations working for justice. And if we invest money, do it with sustainability and justice in mind. We can also choose where to spend our money and support artists and writers and activists who speak out against injustices. We can get involved with politics and support those who share our values. Note, we still have a runoff coming up in Georgia. And of course, we need to be kind and compassionate. These are very difficult times for many of us. In dealing with our own issues, we may forget that we're all in this together. As long as we can do like that little girl in the reading by Naomi, She Have Nine, that I shared, make a fist and open our hands. And yes, that can have a metaphorical meaning. We will get there. Then perhaps we can sing that Holly Near song, that last verse, and really be there. I invite you to sing it with me. We are gentle, loving people, and we are singing for our lives. We are gentle, loving people, and we are singing for our lives. May it be so.